Very happy tonight to have Mike Johnson here. Mike, why don't you come on up here and talk with us a little bit. Alan and I thought that for those that were here, it'd be great to hear it out loud, and for those who can't be here, we'd have a recording of Mike, because we've been getting some questions. Both of us have been getting some questions from residents, especially in the University Heights neighborhood, but it affects all of Ward 4 when we do nice improvements and nice things in our ward.
Emails.
I bet you have. So thanks for being here. We are very glad to have Chancellor, Vice Chancellor for...
Associate Vice
I looked it
Chancellor.
up today, and I can't remember.
Abbreviated, it's head plumber.
Head plumber. Awesome man, friend of the city, comes to all of our meetings and appreciate the relationship.
It's probably easier, and unfortunately, it's hard to put up on the camera, but I brought a drawing. We started working, well, Phase 2 of Fowler House was envisioned as far back as 2001, 2002. I arrived in '04, and we had talked about a Chancellor's house a little bit, but it was fairly quiet. And then we had the opportunity, with the kind generosity of the Fowlers, to actually build a facility. But we did not build Phase 2. And Phase 2 was additional landscaping, some garden-like areas where you could do larger entertaining in good weather, and a facility that could seat 100 to 120 people inside for some of the larger events. The Gerhardts have used that facility as I envisioned it. A lot of my Navy experience, if you lived in Navy housing, especially flag officer, general officer housing, you were living in the citizens' homes, and it was expected for you to invite people in and entertain the general public. That's why you were in the house and in your position. We built the Fowler House with that same expectation of the Chancellor, and he and Jane have done a wonderful job. Thousands of people in that house in the 6 years they've lived in the house. But they can only seat 14 in the dining room, 34 in some other areas reasonably comfortable, and then maybe a few more, maybe up to 70 if you start putting tables in some different places. Obviously, you can entertain a lot more outside. They've done hundreds in and around the outside of the facility and that sort of thing. But we talked to the Fowlers again. We're in Campaign, Arkansas, in a silent phase. And they had looked at some opportunities, and they very much wanted to add to this facility. So their kind generosity, we recently accepted a $2.934 million gift to expand the house and create this addition to the west, creating a more formal elliptical garden in between the existing house and the future addition. The addition will be just off of Oliver, in between the current driveways. There'll be some fill and some adjustment out there. You can put a tent up in the elliptical area for larger entertaining in the evenings. The back connecting walkway up by the northern driveway into the garages will be a connection area that can be quasi-covered, so you can come back and forth in rain and that sort of thing. Maybe some type of fans or perhaps portable heating or cooling in the wintertime. But connecting the house, and the facility will seat about 120 at tables with audiovisual IT equipment, a couple of little patios where you can do a reception and then sit down for dinner. Supporting catering area. There is catering areas in the house itself. In fact, one of the 3 parking spaces is set up to be emptied in the garage, and there's a line of plug-ins along the wall to bring in hot and cold racks. And there's a small catering area with an ice maker and some things. So that's where they serve food into the house itself beyond the kitchen. So we're under design. We hope to start construction probably springtime and have it ready to go in the July-August time frame in the summer of '16. We're going to do some more work. We'll do some work, obviously, on the elliptical area and the gardens. Probably we'll have a hard surface instead of grass. No matter what kind of grass we build, if you have a little more formal occasion and some of the ladies get into the heels and that sort of thing, you end up planting your shoe in the grass and walking barefoot. So we'll probably have a hard surface. Pre-planned pole holes for tents with caps on them. So they're going to put up a tent to cover and put it back. We're going to improve the grounds in the front of the house. Some flowers, perhaps a walking path, maybe from the parking area behind the alumni house, where you could walk in, kind of walk across a little bridge over the stream, walk around, and then up to the house itself. It already has a sidewalk along Maple Street, on the north side of Maple Street. The other drawing I brought is also the area across the street in white. We just bought those 3 parcels, and we're going to make this. We have parking behind the alumni house, parking across the street by Epley Center, and then parking here, and that would probably be about 100 spaces in all those areas. And we'll continue to have people be able to walk from lot 44 down in the pit or be shuttled up. We will demolish the 3 houses, do some drainage, storm drain, sidewalk work. Low impact, it's on a little bit of a hill, so there's some topography. We're looking at 40 to 50 parking spaces in there. Night skies, commitment to not let light trespass and all that. We'll do some trees and try to be a good neighbor. We will put the open ditch in front of the house and the dirt running into that, into storm drains, and catch that and work through that. Somewhat like we're looking at north of Cleveland in that area up there. So trying to use low impact development type principles in that parking area. While we're doing all this, Phase 2 of Razorback Road is underway. For those who use Maple Street, between Garland and Razorback, they have started doing utility relocation. City's working on water and sewer north of Maple. The intersection of Razorback and Maple will have electrical, gas, AT&T, Cox, water, sewer, storm, all of that coming and going around. The power, electrical power will all be underground. Should work fine. We'll probably take it underground a little further up Maple Street, maybe past that back parking lot into Epley, maybe a little farther before we come back out of the ground. We're also going to be locating that high voltage power line off of Razorback Road, and we're going to be running it down the back of the parking lot along Razorback, so it won't be right out on Razorback Road. Eventually it will run down Graham Street, Thomas and Graham, where we, on the east side of the street, we own all that property between Markham and all the way down to the Dill Tennis Center. That'll be with Phase 3 of Razorback Road. Phase 1 is in construction. Utilities have been relocated. That probably will finish in the early spring. Phase 2, the piece between Garland Maple, coming down to Razorback Maple, and a little bit south on Razorback until it clears probably that entrance to the service entry to the back of the alumni house, because we have some retaining wall replacement to do in front of alumni house. That'll be Phase 2. Utilities underway, probably complete by early March. Bid letting on construction in January 27th or March 10th, one of those two. And active construction probably starting in the March-April time frame. They normally don't penalize them for December through March on their days of completion. They can work if they want to, it's up to them. Depends on the weather. I would expect the Phase 2 construction to be through the fall 15 football season. We've worked okay with everybody on the south side, so we'll be working on the north side of the stadium for the fall of 15, and probably completion at about the same time, early spring of 16. Phase 3, which is equal to the combined amounts of Phase 1 and 2, about $6 million. We have, and the city has put it in, we have put it in, the city for us, for the 16 to 19 State Transportation Improvement Program, the STIP, and hopefully we might see funding in 16. As early as 16, which would flow nicely and allow us to finish that stretch in the 17, early 18 time frame. It's going to be a $6 million stretch and a lot of retaining wall. From Alumni House all the way to just down by the Walker Indoor Practice Facility. And some of it very tall, right next to the stadium. Bridge will still be there. May take the bridge off to build the wall and put it back on, but we'll see. We're trying to. They have agreed to giving us a brick ledge at the bottom of that retaining wall. So if we're able, we're looking at maybe a natural rock veneer or something on that retaining wall instead of just bare concrete. We've debated, you can do things inside forms now on retaining walls. California, they have palm trees. We thought that might be a little out of place. We didn't think about a herd of hogs running for about 5 blocks down the wall would necessarily be welcome. Who knows? But right now we're looking at some natural Arkansas stone, just a stone veneer to give it a different look and make it kind of fit in with what's going on.
Okay. Mike, what did you say was going to run down Thomas as part of phase 3?
The local power line that runs through up Razorback right now, it would run at the back of the parking lots, run on the east side of Thomas and the east side of Graham, where we would grant them right-of-way easements. So it would be across the street from anybody in the areas where there's houses on that side of the street.
East side.
So the actual installation would be inboard of the curb line on Thomas?
Right.
Yeah.
His house is gonna be the one most affected by everything on Graham. When it comes to houses, right, you're it.
Well,
You
and,
said
and
that's high voltage.
yeah, well, it's that power line that currently runs up Razorback on the west side.
Okay,
It'll just be moved back on the back of the parking lot.
not put underground.
We're going to put some of it underground, probably up towards Alumni House as it loops around and comes down Maple Street and across the intersection to go up the hill.
That'd be great. Count that as a request.
Well,
Yeah, and I'm glad to hear the.
for a
other
couple of
underground.
$1 million, we'd
I
love to
know.
honor your
You
request.
could find it. And so when you were talking about the step money, that's because it's a state highway.
Correct.
So.
It's federal money, 80%, 20% city match. We
people ask
have
about
cost
that.
shared a little bit on phase 1, 50/50.
Okay.
We're talking about maybe something on phase 2 and phase 3, but people don't realize we're probably going to end up donating what may be $2.5, $3 million in right-of-way. So asking us to cost share as well is sort of tipping. It's everybody's benefit to widen the road, and it is a state highway. It's not a university highway. But we're trying to do our part. And the city's been great. The city is also putting up a lot of money in utility relocation because there's a formula. If you're in the right-of-way and you have to move out, there's a formula. If you're out of the right-of-way and you have to move it further to be out of the new right-of-way, there's another formula for reimbursement. But it's not 100% reimbursement. So.
Where does the retaining wall run from to? I mean, how long
Well,
is
it
the
runs
retaining
right
wall?
around the corner on Maple in front of Alumni. We'll probably put Alumni in. I think we'll still have the steps in front of Alumni, but you'll have to walk down the sidewalk. We may look at an entrance just up Maple Street where you can come in level off Maple Street. That retaining wall will run all the way. It's broken up at, there's an entrance into the parking on the northwest corner of the stadium where it is now, right there by the head of the big retaining wall currently. Those 2 ramps coming down will go away. We'll have a couple of steps coming down that'll follow the wall so they won't come out. Still be Markham, still be Hotz. There'll be a wall between Markham and Hotz, a wall between Markham and all the way to Maple Street with one area that go up into the parking lot in the middle. Part of what we're doing on Maple Street, I think there's 22 or 23 access points on Maple Street. From parking lots, from streets, into buildings in front of University Police. Our goal is to get them down to just being the city streets. So we'd love to take them from 23 down to maybe 7 or 8. And it just makes sense. And then that's why we wanted to connect Thomas and Graham, at least as far as Potts, where the parking lot is. So you have a parallel path to Razorback, and you could come in at Meadow and what will be a 4-way intersection to a streetlight. So you can enter Razorback. Right now, people are darting across Razorback, trying to do left turns, and it's pretty tough. We're also going to put the bus stop over into that parking lot where the old ticket office was, where we're creating the 4-way intersection at Meadow, and take that bus stop off Razorback there by the outdoor track where the mid-block crosswalk with all the kids coming across the Razorback. If you could imagine with 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes, it just gets more dangerous.
I have another question. The parking across from the transfer's house on the west side of Oliver, you said you're gonna take the 3 houses down.
Mhm.
There are only 3 there, is that right?
Right.
So the university already purchased those,
Mhm.
that's done. And when you say low impact, because you own them, do you follow, you don't have to follow the low impact, you said you're gonna try to, but you don't have to follow the low impact development plan, do you? How do you
First
get
of all-
permitted
first
for
of
what
all-
you're doing there? Yeah,
We don't.
okay.
We're a state entity.
Right, what I told
State,
somebody.
state sovereignty. Having said that,
We will.
we do our best to do 2 things. Try to follow and comply with state or city ordinances as best we can, and support sustainability and common sense, and a good neighbor. We've been doing sustainability for 10 years now. We've restored part of Mullins Creek. We've done other things. We had a city partnership along with an NGO that put in about $300,000 to match up with our 300 or 400, and the city put in 25,000. So we'll do our best to have it make sense. You all have seen some designs for that parking north of Cleveland. We're going to try to put as many low-impact design features as make sense, and sense is both sustainability, impact on the area, and cost. Some of this is not free, and we can't always be as benevolent as some other person might like to be for whatever reasons. We try.
So in your plan for that parking lot on that corner, do you have any idea that it's gonna impact movement of the street, traffic on the streets there? We've got a 4-way, no, we have a 2-way stop there.
I don't think so. We have not yet started to design it.
Okay.
So as we work through that, there's stops on Oliver, but not on, I don't think it's a 4-way at Maple. I think Maple's a through street.
There may need to be.
So we'll look at that, but
We're
you're,
walking.
but there's, we have a sidewalk in front of Fowler House on the north side of Maple, but it doesn't go anywhere
Right.
past Oliver. Oliver was in the STIP in
Yeah.
or the city's CIP
Yeah.
in 13, and it
Yeah.
disappeared.
We have residents who don't want it, but they might now. I mean, this is
Well-
kind of why I'm talking about how that parking lot's going. We have some residents who had very serious reaction to having parking lot having sidewalks in there, but a parking lot may have an impact on that.
One
It was supposed
thing
to be
we-
on the east side too, which would be perfect if it were.
Yeah, on the west side.
Really? I think the city initially, well, Terry Gully, when he talked to us last year,
Go straight up
Yeah.
the east side from on the Chancellor side.
Right.
No,
So
he
you're-
never said, I was
Well-
in those meetings, and he never committed to either side.
he
because-
didn't. You're
No, we just talked
absolutely
about, I
right.
think the residents on the street were more inclined
Yeah.
to.
As they normally are, to put it on the university.
It was
Yes,
undecided. no, that-
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
there was not a
The-
decision that had been made yet,
Yeah.
but there was a question about, because they had done the sidewalk on.
As I found out at my house, when I had it actually surveyed before we bought it, which a lot of people think is strange, you want to really find out what you're buying. I found out my fence was 4 feet on my neighbor's property. If you take the center line of the road and do the city right-of-ways, those neighbors on the west side will find out at probably about a third of their front yards in city right-of-way.
That's right.
And I think there may be some people who know that, and they're trying to. But I know a lot of cities, they don't ask the neighbors what they think about sidewalks, they just put them in so that people are safer.
Well, for us,
That's what I would do.
frankly, that open ditch with all the mud and stuff flowing down the street on the west side of Oliver where those 3 houses are, no matter what you do, it's an improvement as far as drainage. And we would probably put in storm drainage and curb and gutter, and probably a length of sidewalk. It just doesn't make sense not to. One side or the other, we may even loop around from Maple Street so you can walk up to the driveway, Chancellor's driveway, and come in if you want to walk from down in the pit.
And you also won't have the beer cans flowing down the ditch.
No, they'll be covered by
That's
concrete.
my morning exercise routine, I pick up beer cans. Oh, I know, that's gonna be terrific.
I have a question. The reason I'm here is basically property values, mine, and everybody else's that's in the neighborhood.
Is what?
Property value, how the university affects property of the value of my property.
Mhm.
And I know this place that we just recently paid almost $1 million for. And that kind of excited me, because my property is reasonably half that size and value and worth, and that's a lot of money. It's a lot more than I think anybody else could give me. How did you go about deciding to give this man $900-something thousand?
Well, it's about
for a couple of lots?
0.65 acres.
Okay.
For there's three houses on 3 parcels. I'm not quite sure how they were able to build those things within the ordinances and the code. And one of them went up since I arrived here. And they appraised, in public knowledge, they appraised at about 905, I think. So,
For all three.
that, for all three, 0.65 acres.
Yeah.
And they're not architectural marbles.
Yeah. It's like
Well,
place, yeah.
in that sense, my property does not compare with theirs. However, did you use your power to force them to sell?
No, absolutely not.
I mean, you have done that in my neighborhood.
Very,
My house.
very,
And,
I don't think we've done anything in the 10 years I've been here with eminent domain.
Single family homes? No, I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
What I see is a
Single
chipping
family
away,
homes.
a chipping away of the
Single
city.
family on Cleveland.
If you look at what the university published in 2004, and I know because I had just arrived, we published a land use development boundary around the entire university, with one exception in the northeast quadrant up in Rose Hill, in between Garland and Maple, where it falls off the hill. We're buying property in and not in straight lines, but we're buying property from the top of the hill down a little bit where it makes sense. There's also a creek down there. But we made that commitment to the neighborhoods to quit horizontally sprawling into the neighborhoods. We took streets, we put dotted lines in the streets, and with rare exceptions, we have not bought outside those dotted lines in the 10 years I've been here, with the exception of the Rose Hill neighborhood.
Well, you got different information than I do. My entire focus is one thing I do note, and I've noted in the 47 years I've lived around here, that the university has chipped away at the tax base of this city by using its powers to buy property that would normally be paying property tax, et cetera, et cetera. And it devalues my property, I believe, to have students acting as they are bound to do, living and crowding into my neighborhood, a single-family residential neighborhood. And that's a failure of the city. But it's also a result of the university. I think the university could step in and take responsibility for the effect that it has by hosting so many students in a zone, in an area that they don't belong to. They don't have children.
If you took the university away from Fayetteville, I don't know what it would be. It's the biggest employer in the city. Those students.
I've heard that argument for years.
And if you can show me in the last 10 years any eminent domain the university has exercised, I'd like to see it.
Well, if you can show me somewhere else where this university would go,
And Mr. Albertson, we,
pull that plug and go.
Mr. Albertson, we do understand that those discussions.
The Town and Gown talks about these routinely. That's why we created the Town and Gown a little over about 3 years ago.
Yeah, we're
we
off
just-
topic.
Mr. Johnson only had 20 minutes tonight, and it's at 6:25.
We're gonna keep
so-
meeting, but
we'll
we
keep
want
meeting,
to
but-
set him on Fowler.
I had one question that someone asked me to ask, and then
Mhm.
we'll let you go because I know you're very busy. But did you have any projected timeline on the paving of the parking lot on Cleveland and Hall?
Yes.
Okay,
We talk next summer.
next summer. Okay.
Thank you.
Could I ask one more question about the Fowler House expansion?
Mhm.
So there's no permanent structure being built?
There is.
As a part of it?
Yes.
There is? What is it?
It's
And
this,
where?
it's this area right here on Oliver.
Oh, okay, so that's an
It'll
enclosed.
be a one-story enclosed area where you can seat about 120 with catering support off the current driveway, in between the two driveways.
Okay.
So here's the driveway that runs from Oliver to Razorback, right? Here's Razorback.
Right.
And that's going to be right there across from the new parking lot.
And this will be a little more formal garden area where you can also put tentage for receptions and that sort of thing, but this will be set down year-round. And it'll be stone, it'll be nice, we're trying to make it fit and not detract from Fowler House.
So you said it's between the two driveways, so this is the existing driveway, and then this is also an existing.
Into the garage.
And that's the, yeah, so between those two.
And is there a kitchen in the new structure there?
No, it's a catering, support catering kitchen where you can bring in the catered food, keep it hot, plate it,
Okay. I wasn't sure
workshops,
whether you were talking
workshops
about
and things.
Right.
Some storage for tables and that sort of thing. Not everything they do is a sit-down dinner. It's receptions as food and wine. This will also get the tents out of the driveway on tailgating and other parties, Towers of Old Main, when they put tents up in the driveway just because it's a hard surface. The town and gown, if I can, just one comment.
Yeah, I'm just trying to help you. 'Cause I know
I know, but we have gotten along, I think, great with the city, and we're trying to improve our relationship with the surrounding neighborhoods. The town and gown is one of those tools, and there are two older persons on
Yes.
the town and gown. There's university, there's city staff, there's an at-large student, neighborhood member, neighborhood association. So it's a place to talk about encroachment, noise, safety for both neighbors and students who are often neighbors. I don't know about a lot of history, but I know only 10 years of history, and as we've grown, I think we've become better neighbors. There's still problems. But if we can improve and do things, and we are not proceeding to buy into the neighborhoods other than this one particular buy for a parking lot. But you know, I'm open to emails. I know the town of Gown is open to topics going on the agenda. I know the chancellor really works hard to answer emails and questions and keep the staff responding to that. So if there's specific issues, give us a shot at trying to sit down and talk about them.
And I would like to add to that, it's very helpful if you can watch the videos from the Town and Gown Committee meetings.
Yes,
if you
good
can go through,
idea.
Because, for example, last week, I guess, I mean, there was a great deal of discussion about neighborhood issues and the smoking issues, you know, continuing to deal with all of that and continuing to deal with, you know, student-related issues and that kind of thing. There's even a video that has been made between U of A and Fayetteville city folks for the off-campus students to educate them on all kinds of issues like that: trash, recycling, noise, the over-occupancy, the limitations on number of renters. And that video is available, and that's something that was shown to the whole committee, the Town and Gown Committee, and there was a great deal of discussion about neighborhood issues in that. So it is being addressed. You know, some of us are more or less patient than others because there have been you know issues over time, but it is encouraging to me to see that the Town and Gown Committee is definitely doing what the idea was for them to do in the beginning, and actually you know, addressing them and coming up with you know, ideas for
And the
solutions.
chancellor and the mayor are committed to making that work, as are the staff.
So I
Thank you for
appreciate
saying
that.
that, Beverly, because I think
Yeah.
that's, Mike, thank you for being here. Have a safe trip.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you.
What Beverly just said is very interesting. I didn't know these things, but over the past year or two, I have observed fewer things to complain about with my student neighbors. So I figured something must be going on behind the scenes.
One thing they're doing, and this has just developed in the last couple of years, is that community services is going, it's Yolanda Fields and her staff, they're going to all the new student orientation, and they're handing out it's like a booklet or a folder with several things in it. It talks about what day your trash is picked up, how to find out, you know, what to do if you have extra bags.
We have some of those up here.
Occupancy,
Yeah.
it talks about all kinds of things, animal services, you
Parking
know,
and-
trash.
yeah.
It just keeps going and going, the things they talk about. So that's just been something that's been developed, but I think it's helped. Do you have a
That sounds
question?
great, and I'm glad that they're doing it, they're taking responsibility for the effect that they have on the community. And that's the least that I expect them to do. I'm wondering if they include a copy of the ordinance which dictate the number of people that they're allowed to have in houses.
They do
Certain
reference
zones.
that.
And if they do that, then, well, there's 30 or 40 people on that petition that I gave you a long time ago, of people who are upset as, maybe not as upset as I am. But it's just about, other than my health, I've got property value. That's it. And
I
I
think
count
that
on you supporting the law.
I think your work has made a difference, and I think they've heard your name and your petition, and I think they are taking some steps, in part because of what you've done and what other neighbors have done too. So I think I appreciate your input on this, and you're kind of being a big advocate for it. And I think Beverly's right. We're seeing Town and Gown and other people do some things. So I hope you're seeing some improvement. It does sound like you're very encouraged, but thanks for your input tonight on that.
I'm happy with what I've heard. I've been to
Good,
town
good.
meetings. I saw Mr. Schaefer at the first one I went to, and I recognized a bunch of people. They didn't talk about my particular corner of the world, but that was all right. I'm just looking at the process and what's happening. However, I'm not as young as I used to be. I have a great deal of patience, but I also have young guns that live around me who are in open violation of the ordinance, and nobody seems to be working to deal with that.
Well, the good news is, I think for property values, just to chime in a little bit on that point, since that was the first point you made tonight, there are people who really do want to live and be a part of a neighborhood that is close to the university. So I don't know if you've tried to sell your house or not close to the university, but you probably would find that there are people who are seeking property near the university. They want to live in those neighborhoods. There are others, maybe you're one of us, who really don't want to live where that kind of constant irritation on the skin kind of thing is going on. So if you put your house up for sale, you might see that I don't know if you've done that yet, but I think that's when we kind of learn a lot about our property values, is who wants to live there, who wants to live near the university, who likes that sort of environment, and then how do we protect it once we're in it. But anyway, I think maybe you'd be pleasantly surprised with your property
Well, I
value.
hope so. I'm looking at the price tag that was paid for less land than I have,
Yeah.
and I get kind of excited.
All right. Well, we're glad you all came out tonight. Hope that was helpful to answer some questions on the Fowler specific points. That's what we asked him to specifically talk about tonight, and you all may want to invite him back. I think he's been very, very kind and willing
Gracious.
and gracious with his extra
To
time
attend.
to come to our meetings. And I think you all could have him back and maybe address some more. He asked me for the agenda for tonight when I talked with him, and I told him Alan and I had specifically talked about Fowler and parking and traffic around that area.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we started trying to keep on that topic tonight.
So
Updates?
that was, yeah. The updates, what's going on right now is the budget process, of course. It's continuing. That is coming up this next Tuesday. We'll have our next review of the budget.
If you're interested in hearing the item that Alan and I brought together, I shouldn't even take credit for it because Alan did so much work on it and let me be involved in it, which I was so glad we worked together on a little bit. Talked to the police chief quite a bit about it. The idea was to add a beat. That was Alan's idea. I supported and am supporting the idea that at least we have a basis now for going forward. Even if we can't do it right now, we need a starting point to say this is how much it would cost, this is what we have, these are our beats. Really get that out there. You may have some things you're going to bring up further on it, but for me, I was just really quite delighted that they put the time and energy in to show where we fit in. Statistics can work in your favor or against you, however you want to present them. Sometimes we all know that. You can make it. So you look at some of these cities, like does the university police count in our police count as we relate to other cities and how we fit in on a scale, looking at most police to fewest police, most crimes to fewest crimes, and does that other city have a police force at its university that's counted into those numbers? So there are statistical things like that still need to be maybe discussed a little further, but we had a great starting place here for you all in Ward 4 to look future as to do we need more, and we do.
Yeah, we do. It was 2007 was the last time it was evaluated. We talked about this quite a bit. And the data that the police chief presented us with was, I mean, it was really good data, as Rhonda mentioned. If you look at a bell curve, just generally, Fayetteville ranks in the median range for crime. A little bit more to the high end of the median range. But Fayetteville also ranks out of the 25 peer cities, I believe 25 peer cities they surveyed on, I would say, the 25th to 35th percentile of actual patrol officers on duty at any given time. So there is a gap there, but the problem is right now we don't have a lot of funds in the general fund. So the challenge is finding out how to start looking at that difference. Our police force does an amazing job, but our population's continuing to grow, and at some point that has to be addressed for the future. And I'm not sure if this year's the year to do it, and bringing up an extra beat was just an idea to throw out there to get the discussion started. I didn't think that we were going to change to 9 beats this year necessarily, but I thought there was a possibility of an overlapping extra person on duty. But that comes down to not just one person that you're paying, it comes down to at least 4. So I'm not sure where we're at with it right now, but I think that conversation just needs to continue.
And one of the things that we found, and it's something that I certainly have had a lot of experience with at the university in my position, when you get a grant, like the police department has, we have 3 positions that are grant paid for. So when you put a police officer in schools, for example, when you get a school grant that says we'll pay for this fully trained, fully prepared, out of the academy police officer. We got 3 of those, right? You could probably speak to them. You want to come join us in this conversation? I don't want to put you on the spot since we didn't ask you to, but so we supported that as a council, and I enjoyed getting to vote for that. But you have to stop and think when you vote for a grant. Now, how long is this grant, and when does it end, and then who picks up, and then does the city pick up the full cost? Well, yeah, usually that's what happens unless you get another grant, but sometimes these are kickstart kinds of things, or they're one-time money, and so we do have 3. I think that was good. We have 3 positions there that are grant funded that we're going to have to absorb or get rid of. I think it's 3. Am I right about that? I believe it's 3 that we voted for, and those will end, and then we'll have to pick that up, and we will. We talked about that. I asked that question when we voted on it. Are we prepared to pick this up? Let's don't just vote to accept a grant that we then have to lose the officers of. We got to be prepared. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the math in this, is adding a beat. Well, how much does it cost? Well, then how much down the road have we already committed to absorbing in the budget? So those are kinds of good conversations probably to have every year or two on the council about police and fire. We both, I think we told you last month that we met with fire people too. I had lunch with one and learned a lot about our fire needs, and very common conversation among Ward 4 residents is we have a beautiful new fire station out on Weddington, but what about near the campus where some of us live who know that we're sharing that neighborhood fire department with the entire university, right? So who's paying for that? The city is. And how many people are living around that fire station that's on Garland that kind of came to my house recently when I had a false alarm and got there fast, but with yours with a real one. Yeah. And so absolutely. So that's another big conversation, I think, budget-wise, is that if that fire, if there's a big problem on the campus, that's the fire station for the right. So we've got that little issue too to think about. The university has a police department, doesn't have a fire station. Well, that would be a big deal for it to have a fire station. They probably don't need a dedicated fire station, but do we need an improved one for the neighborhood and the university?
Or could they cost share with us?
Question, yes, no
wonderful.
question.
Yeah.
So those are expensive things in the budget that are being talked about.
Yeah, and one of the things on the police grant that I didn't know, and this was kind of an educational process on the grants, is one of the things that for us to accept the grant, we have to maintain those new positions through 2017, and the last year we have to absorb those new positions into our budget. So that's something to think
Have
about
to.
is we have to in
Voted
order to
for
get that grant. So just things that you don't generally know until
So
they
it's easy
share
to
all
vote,
that
yes, we'll take that
information.
money, and then you have to stop and say, now, when does it
Yep.
end, and when do we absorb it, and what happens at that point?
And what are our revenue projections, and are we going to meet them?
So we had a long budget meeting last Monday night and talked about a lot of things like this, and that's a good process. We'll vote on it next Tuesday, not a week from tomorrow, for the budget for 2015.
I just wrote down some notes that I wanted to share with y'all from the budget meeting that I thought would be impactful, and Rhonda can help with one of these because she's on the transportation committee, but sidewalks was one of the things. This year, we didn't have the budget for the sidewalks that were initially planned. The mayor expected to have $1.25 million for sidewalks, and Paul Becker, the city finance director, was only comfortable with $750,000 this year. So what they're doing is, and it's not just because of money, it's because of money, manpower, and the lack of being able to get people to bid on the contract to actually put the concrete down, because concrete prices have gone up, and people want to take larger jobs like we saw on the parking deck. Parking deck costs went up dramatically because of the concrete, so that's one of the issues with the sidewalks. But they're taking on some of the larger projects this year and hope to next year come back, well, I say next year, 2016, come back with more of our wish list.
So the way I see that from the Transportation Committee point of view is you put a lot of money in there, the amount that we'd like to see in there, both of us would.
Yeah.
But then you look at your manpower and you look at how much you have to farm out to outside projects, how much your inside staff that already is on the payroll can do. And this amount, it is a cutback because of lack of funds available for the full thing, but it also closely matches what we think we can actually accomplish in the next year.
Right.
So it makes it easier, I think, to accept as a good plan, because you're feeling like you're matching up what you can actually accomplish. So
Yeah.
I think you're having
Right.
a little more trouble with cutting it back than I do, maybe. I'm assuming
Well,
that. But
the reason I'm having such a hard time cutting it back is because Ward 4 had such a big list that really did need to be accomplished. Now, we have gotten some really good things done, but there's also $500,000 in the budget for Willow Bend right now, and I'm not completely convinced that the city can legally develop Willow Bend, because what that is, it's a cost share with the city for us to build the infrastructure and sidewalks in Ward 1. And with that, people would then apply for the lower income housing. Well, we're basically would be subsidizing the developers for that. And that's kind of a nasty word to say, but that's basically what it is. And that's what is allowing them to build the lower income housing. And I'm all for Fayetteville developing lower income housing so that people can live in town, whereas sometimes they wouldn't be able to. But my question is, without tying up federal tax dollars, can we use the federal exemptions for people to apply for purchasing those homes? And so far, I haven't seen, and the developers haven't presented us with clear ways in which they can do that yet. And so I've asked for an update on that. That $500,000 that is being put toward that, and then $500,000 again in next year in the next budget season, so that's $1 million. But the $500,000 for this year would take it back from the $750,000 to the $1.25 we would have needed for the sidewalks. So that's kind of where I'm having some trouble with it, just because I don't know if it's, one, legal, and two, because, well, as far as from my perspective, the city had already promised the sidewalks before the Willow Bend was.
So, Alan, do we know which ones are not getting built? I mean, did they go back and look at what number, which ones had to be eliminated in order to make that number? I mean, how as far as where they are in the city and how it affects Ward 4?
In Ward 4, we're getting, Markham will have the sidewalk put in, and Palmer, I believe.
Yeah, I'm trying to, we prioritized,
I don't
all
have
the
my list with me
priorities
right
are,
now.
yeah, all the priorities, the ones that, there were lower priority ones that got,
Yeah.
like Lonnie that connects to Weddington. That was a
Right,
low,
for the crosswalk,
Berry
yeah.
Street that dead ends.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
they
some
were
of those
taken
like
off,
that.
yeah.
We didn't take off anything that had to do with close to routes to school or around the, anything that was started that we're still trying to finish up the linking. We didn't take it, it was the lower priority,
Yeah.
you know,
Got it.
and then on the Willow Bend, I will speak to that on a little different point of view. Number one, I do feel like that anytime we subsidize something, it can be called a I will start with the legal. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't
Yeah.
understand the legal ramifications of this, except that Kent thinks we can do it, I think, so I'm not sure. But
He told me last week he was concerned,
He's
and that's why I'm
concerned.
concerned.
But the second part of it is that it's an area of town that probably needs some improvement. So even when we talk about tonight, like Oliver and sidewalks and curb and gutters, yeah, it's a benefit to the university, we know that, and yeah, this is a benefit to the developers. On the other hand, there needs to be some drainage work in that part of town. It's boggy and it hasn't had any attention in forever, and it needs some sidewalks, and it needs we're gonna cut through, we'll have a little bit of connectivity in that part of town that we wouldn't have had before. So your points
Yeah.
are absolutely valid. Just another kind of way of looking at that is that it does improve some part of the city that needs improvement. It looks pretty bad, that area of town.
It does.
And it does provide some housing and the legalities of who would qualify for that housing and all or something. I don't know, I've heard a lot about, but it's infill and it's housing and it's improvements to the infrastructure and to the drainage and to some of that. So
Yeah.
that's why I probably am more inclined to support that.
We
than
don't
you.
we don't agree on this one. I don't know if y'all can tell.
We usually agree on things,
Yeah,
but
we
I
do.
think we see it. I think we see
Yeah.
all the sides of it. It's
Yeah.
just a tough one. I agree with you. It's a challenging one.
It is, and one of the I can't remember who it was that came up to me after the meeting, and they were concerned from an environmental aspect of usually when an area has water runoff, drainage problems, or if it's really more of a wetland area, usually you don't build on it to increase to make it have better water problems, because usually you leave it alone. But there's houses in parts of this area and not in the other. In this area, there's not right now. So
Good
that's
point.
one reason I'm just having a
good.
problem with it. But that's that one. The other thing I was going to mention to y'all in the budget was salaries. We had discussed that at the last meeting, and it looks like at this point the administration has decided to wait until after the end of the first quarter of next year to look at giving raises, because the revenue projections didn't meet what they had thought they would. So that's not going to come up. So and the Yvonne Richardson Center, I think this is important for the entire city. It's not really a Ward 4 issue, but it's a city issue, because we have a lot of children in Ward 4, and they go to gyms and they participate in athletic programs offered by the city, and we are going to be doing some improvements to the Yvonne Richardson Center that'll actually pay for themselves through like LED lighting and a new floor and things like that. But the energy cost savings are going to be paying for a lot of that through the sustainability fund.
And none of us are old enough to care about this, but the senior center is getting some great improvements too. So
They are.
my grandmother's excited about that. But yeah, we've got some new money dedicated to improvements at the senior center. They've been asking for that for the 4 years that I've been on the council, and probably longer than that. They need a little more space. They have great programs at the senior center, so that's exciting too.
So that's the main points I wrote down from the budget that I was thinking about.
That's good.
And
Those are good.
I forgot to write that
Those
one
are good.
down, but
But that, yeah, I was glad to see senior center get in there this time.
absolutely.
So what's the overall status of the budget process?
Well, we tabled it at the last meeting, or left it on the first reading, because one of the council members wasn't there, and she wanted to be there for the vote and the discussion.
Now, when you say the vote, you mean to approve the budget?
Well,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
approve or
So we've been
whatever
looking at it
happens.
for several months. Paul brings us pieces of it. We do different presentations at the end of agenda sessions. And then last Monday night, we just had a dedicated meeting with department heads and, I guess they're department heads, division chairs and all were there. And so we had just a dedicated meeting to going through it line by line and seeing the change from previous years to next year, pluses or minuses, and explaining some of the big differences. A big difference, I'm chair of the equipment committee. There's a vast difference in what we had allocated and what we will have. And that is due to several things. The cost of equipment, is just gone up. We bought a piece of equipment last week, or we'll buy it tomorrow night, I guess. We'll approve that. But it doubled in price, like from $200 almost $400,000 in a very, very similar piece of equipment. And so there's some things like that. So we talk about, when you talk about what's the process, we sit in the meeting and we look at the charts and we talk about why the change and why it goes up or down, and then get explanations from the people who are actually out there in the fields doing all that and why we need to do that. And then we vote on it after the third reading, and we could vote on that next Tuesday night if we decided to go on to the third and final reading, or we could hold it and wait one more time. There are a few things on the budget that need to be approved pretty quickly because they're starting to look at those things for January, so we may go ahead. I would guess that we would if we're all 8 there, but we had one person absent last week, and we like to hold it for a long time and get as much input as we can.
Yeah, and I generally like to go to 3 meetings, or 3 readings if possible, just because it's such a large appropriation of
I think something
funds.
as important as the budget, it warrants 3 meetings, yes.
It's a large appropriation, but
It is. It's tough.
I'm probably going to ask to hold it one more time, and
Well, I'll support
anything,
that if you-
thank you, anything major we could do a budget adjustment on and approve, and they can roll it back from a carryover if they needed to. But I just think it's good to give citizens that may not have heard about it enough another 2 weeks if they need it, to say,
I just had
think
one
about this.
question that I noticed that I had never noticed in the past, which is there's a really big chunk of the increase in the budget that is coming out of reserves, not reserves, the general reserve, but reserves that are connected to each area where the budget has been increased, and I'm thinking of water, sewer, that kind of thing, that there's a reserve funds that's dedicated to certain kinds of work or improvement, and that next year's budget does have pull from reserves in about 3 different areas to cover the increase in the overall budget, which is something that I didn't even realize there were dedicated reserves.
Water and
out
sewer.
there.
Was there one other than that, or is
Yeah.
that
Well, I
it?
thought so, but I don't remember.
I'm thinking
Rhonda.
that's the
I
only
couldn't tell you
one.
what it was, but
There's
there was, the biggest chunk was the
library.
water or sewer for something you committed to, a
Yeah.
project.
Melissa.
Is that
Lake
it?
Lake Sequoia.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
The dredging project has taken longer than expected, and that's a capital project that they've been expecting, and I'm on the Water and Sewer Committee, and we've been expecting that for quite some time. So that enterprise fund is paying
It's an
for
enterprise
that
fund.
all in and of itself. It's actually, the Water and Sewer Fund is the largest fund in the city. That takes up, it's either 49 or 51% of our budget. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it actually won't impact the general budget, or funds that could be spent elsewhere. And also, it's helping pay for a rate study
That's the
coming up.
Mhm.
So I can get you
I'm
I can
just
get you the
curious,
details
yeah,
on that
because I
too.
think, I mean, that's just good that that's available, and it doesn't come out of what's left in the general fund, reserve fund. It has to be maintained, since we did have to pull a couple of million out of that for the parking deck. So it looks like there's an increase in the budget for next year, but when you really look at it, a lot of it's coming out of those dedicated reserves and not an increase in revenues that we expect to come in.
I've
I'm
got
gonna
my
see it.
notebook on the seat of my car out there, and I might could have helped with that, but I'm not sure I could, because
As
that's
long as
complicated.
you all aren't concerned about that, I'm not.
Well, that's a
concerned
good thing
about
I need to look at that, Kara. I'm glad you brought it up. It's a good thing to look at. I didn't have any questions about that when he presented it, but I'm not sure I was thinking about the word reserves. So that's a good thing to look at. You see it there?
While y'all are talking, I'm gonna try to find that page for you.
While he's looking, we've got about 4 minutes left. Did anybody have any other things they wanted?
Two things.
We're glad you're here, Mr. Hodges.
Number one, thank you for your service, it's been great. I think your servant leader has been great for this board, and wish you the best of luck. My other concern is to continue, we've got a new councilman coming in, and I'm concerned about his dedication to the Ward 4 meetings as such, or is Alan going to be running this alone? Has this been appealed to him to come to these meetings, to be a part of it, and find out what this small constituency says, rather than somebody else outside the ward is saying? I've got a grave concern with that, if this individual is not going to attend these meetings.
I've never seen him at one of these meetings except for the one that we had the debate at. Did you ask him that question, Mr. Mueller? Did you ask him if, yeah, I think you did.
No,
Or I
did not ask.
Oh, I
him
asked
that
the question for you. But yeah, I think that it is sometimes pretty surprising to someone who gets on the council if they haven't been actively involved in city work about how much time and meetings, and it was a little unfair, I thought, last week when the people pointed out, I'll just say her name, Adela Gray is having the most absences. Well, I don't know anybody
Well,
who
that's
puts
true.
in more time. She's at every bid opening and every committee, I mean, maybe she missed one more meeting than I did, which is what the stats turned out to look like, but it's not just city council meetings on the first and third Tuesday night. It's so much more than that, and Adela probably would get the prize for the most hours. So yeah, I'm concerned about that too. I think you're mentioning it tonight means that I could go do a little door knocking this week and go say hello and impress upon him that,
I'm going to send emails, and I'm
Good.
going to personally ask him, is he committed to these one of these meetings?
that's what I would urge you to do so, and I will do the same.
And by extension, is he interested in what the views of the people of the ward are?
Well, I think we'll
Because I
have,
got to be perfectly honest with you, when we had those 5 guys up there, and you addressed questions to each one, he had the same answer for every question, regardless of whether he was the first respondent or the 5th.
There are lots of issues that we deal with, that not just one, a whole lot of
And-
issues.
And I'm concerned that without attending these meetings, he'll not get to hear what the people of the ward think.
well, I can promise you that I'll be here at all these meetings. I mean, I
course
might
you
go,
will.
I might go on a vacation occasionally, once a year.
Or
I
have a
try
job
to, or
conflict,
have a
or-
job
yeah.
conflict once a year maybe, but, I definitely will be reaching out to Mr. Latour, prior to, Rhonda not being with us anymore, but, anyway, I will be talking with him, and, I'm sure that we'll work well together, and we're just gonna
I'm sure you
move
will.
forward.
You will.
We're just
Alan's
gonna
been
move
great to
forward.
work with. Thank you for bringing
He did
that up.
respond to that candidate forum that he would attend the Ward 4
I thought he
meeting.
did.
did.
Thought he did. Or
He
was
said
that?
that, whether he meant it or not, we'll see.
We'll see.
Well, he initially said he didn't know what it was, and then said,
He
if
didn't know.
it is a thing, I'll
Okay,
go.
what ward he lived in? Anyway, that's another.
Well, it's just funny, when I was running, I was scared to death of missing anything. I mean, like this budget meeting we had last Monday night, if I had been either the person in the runoff tomorrow or the person who just got this seat, I'd have been at that budget meeting. It's next year's budget. And I was there on time and until the end. I think I was on time, wasn't I?
You were, yeah.
But I mean, and I'm not going to be here to participate in that, but that's a big deal. The budget, it's hard enough if you listen to the experts talking. It's still hard, it's still difficult. You need to be there and actively be participating in all those conversations. And I still can't answer the questions because it's a challenge. It's a lot of money and it's a lot of different tentacles. And yeah, I'm concerned too, and I think it's good that you brought that up so that we can pass that, all of us can pass that on, that the importance of that. We're a small crowd here usually on Monday nights, but I know so many people will ask me questions that I can say, go back and look at the Ward 4 meeting. He was there. He spoke about that. Better than me trying to miscommunicate something. So it works well to be able to have them recorded, and
Absolutely.
it's just fun on top of that.
Yeah.
Educational, quite.
I do have some information. Beverly, there's about $10 million here out of the Water and Sewer Reserve Fund. It's broken up there are about 20 line items. I could read them all, but I can show them to you after the meeting
that's
too.
fine.
But you know, there's 2.3 for some sewer rehabilitation, a little over 2 million for water system rehabilitation and replacement, some relocations, phosphorus standard managements. There's just quite a few.
Well, there are
things.
obviously things that they think need to be done, and absent having the revenue projected, you know, available to get them done, then
Right.
they can be pulled funding from reserves, but that's probably not something you'd want to, you know,
No.
rely on in the future.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look into that, yeah.
And
Good point.
I'd have more detail for you right now, and I can show you after the meeting, because it's actually a lot more than this. This is just in the capital,
Right.
the
Yeah.
CIP, the capital improvement projects. But I can definitely find out for you. We're preparing, and I know that we're not depleting the reserves out of the water and sewer because we're preparing to have to deal with minerals. The possibility, we don't expect to have to meet the mineral requirements that they've currently said. Right now what they're saying is all this water that comes into our water treatment facility has to come out cleaner than the stream that it's going into. Well, we are not set up to deal with salt content in water and things like that. So their name, CH2M Hill, who we contract with, are excellent at working with them on these standards, and we're in the middle of that right now. But there is a large reserve for in the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, so I think that we're going to be okay, but we just have to be prepared for that because it would be a multi-million-dollar expansion project of our
Unfunded
water.
mandate.
Yes, unfunded
Good
mandate
point,
would
good
be a good
point.
way to put it.
Mhm.
So that's just a brief update to your question, but I'll try to get you some more. too.
Good, all right. 7:03, anybody else have anything? Well, I want to take just a moment to say thank you. Thank you for saying that, Rashad. It's been really fun. When I think back on just talking about the budget, I remember at the debate that we had down at St. Paul's, and I showed up, a law student had died that day, and I barely made it to the meeting. I was so emotional about the death of Noel Smith, who's so dear to me. And I went in, I was sort of a basket case, and I sat down by my opponent and the other people, and he started pulling out all this budget stuff. And he was a perfectly nice guy, but he just started pulling, and I was sitting, I had some notes in a little notebook, but yeah. But I was like, holy cow, he's so prepared. And then every question that was asked, he had all the answers. He really did have very confident answers. And it'd come to me, and I would have to say, I don't know. I thought I had prepared and studied. But anyway, I say that to say, I hadn't planned on saying that tonight, but since we're talking about the budget, I will just say, there are just a lot of things you don't know when you run for these positions. But I hope what people will always know when they run for a position of city council, that they love this city and that they love their neighborhood and that they love the people in their neighborhood. And if you kind of guide your decisions and all out of the love of your heart, even when you make wrong ones sometimes or wish you hadn't have done that or something, I still think you end up probably with a good council. And I think you all have a very good council, and I think you're in really good hands next year. I think that it's going to be just fine. You've got Alan here. You've got a 2-year veteran, and I think if you have friends in Ward 1, you need to encourage them to get out tomorrow. The polls are open from 7:30 to 7:30. There's an important race tomorrow in Ward 1, and we all have friends in Ward 1, and we should encourage them to go vote. And then there's the anti-discrimination ordinance coming up. There's a lot of stuff out there. No matter how you feel about that ordinance, you should read it again, and you should think about it again. You should encourage people who are scared and afraid of something. There were people so afraid of the streamside protection ordinance, and nothing bad has happened. Good things have happened. You know, we're looking at good water and air for everybody, and just equal protection of everyone. It's just kind of simple to me. I'm glad I got to vote for that. I'm glad I got to vote for the streamside and several other things that we've done. I'm glad I got to work with Sarah Lewis. It was a real pleasure in my life, and I'm glad I got to work for all of you, and thank y'all for coming to the meeting. Thank you for putting a sign in your yard for me. Thank you for telling me what you thought about things and helping me with votes. Thank you for everything. And thank you, buddy. It's been fun. I'm still here till the end of December. I'm not missing any meetings coming up, none at all. And still will love to have your emails, and we'll pass those on to John if need be, or get something in there as fast as I can for you all. But it's been a pleasure. And like I've said, I just love my husband a tiny bit more than I love being on the couch. He just barely trumps. But
Well, you should.
he says we're going to be happy in Tampa, Florida. He's already very happy there. He's a great dean of the Honors College, and he's doing wonderful things, and I'm looking forward to supporting him. I've worked at the university for 36 years, and so I'm going to be without a job for a while, and that's going to be fun. I told him I could even learn where the cleaners is. He does all that stuff for us.
might learn.
So I'm going to learn to do something. I'm going to learn to be a wife a little bit, and that'll be fun. But thank you all from the bottom of my heart for a really, and I'm sorry when I disappointed you. I wanted to say that too. But I thank you for your support and kindness towards me for these 4 years.
Well,
Go work more.
it's not over yet. You're not
That's keep
done.
the
You're not
weeks.
done. You know.
And y'all support this guy. His heart's in the right place. It's good.
Well, and Rhonda's been one of the best people I've ever had the opportunity of learning from. So we
Sweet.
couldn't appreciate you
been
more,
fun.
and we're gonna miss you
Thank you.
a lot.
I'm going to miss you too. Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.